The most news in the morning. CNN's American Morning. Weekday, 6 a.m. Eastern.
Who's up? Over here, guys. 3, 2, 1, go. There you go. Tap it. Oh, that is incorrect.
For these 7th grade boys, math is a competitive sport.
I like to call it controlled chaos.
The chaos is part of a program at Woodbridge Middle School in Virginia. Faced with a gender gap in test scores, the school formed single-gender classrooms.
Ladies, take a look.
Testing the growing school of thought that boys and girls are hardwired to learn differently.
The best way for the boys is not the best way for the girls. The best way for the girls is not the best way for the boys.
Dr. Leonard Sachs, author of Why Gender Matters, says the solution? Split them up. Why does gender matter when it comes to learning?
The brain research is showing us quite clearly that the brains of girls and boys develop along different trajectories.
Sachs says math skills develop earlier in boys, language skills faster in girls.
The surprising finding is that the co-ed classroom ends up disadvantaging both girls and boys, ends up reinforcing gender stereotypes. The girls end up thinking that abstract number theory is for boys, the boys end up thinking creative writing is for girls.
Cause and effect.
Proponents of single-sex education say boys learn best with competition and movement.
Set yourselves up over here.
What is it about movement and boys that seem to somehow go together when it comes to teaching?
The boys in general, just if they're in their desk and seated and expected to sit and do their work there, they're more apt to become unfocused. Be disturbed by others, start the tapping, start making the noise.
Megan Kennedy says since the program began 3 years ago, reading scores in the all-boy classrooms are up and discipline problems are down.
This is the math process.
In Kristen Williams' all-girl math class, warm lamplight and desks grouped together reflect the thinking that girls learn best working in a cooperative environment.
Give them a lot of social time, and opportunity to be verbal, to work in partners, to work in groups.
Williams says she's seen dramatic improvements, particularly among girls that struggled in co-ed math classes.
These are just sort of guidelines.
But even with some signs of success, single-sex education has its critics.
If you assume that boys behave one way and you teach to that stereotype, and you assume that girls learn another way and you teach to that stereotype, what you're doing is limiting the option of kids. You're reinforcing stereotypes.
Professor David Sadker, who's written extensively about gender bias in schools, says rather than separating students by gender, schools should work to make co-ed classrooms better.
Creating single-sex schools to improve test grades is a cheap solution to a much deeper problem.
Well, I think it's really good
But for Dara Rawls, the all-boys class was the answer to his problems. After getting C's and D's through grade school and struggling emotionally, Dara's mom, Ashanti, moved the family to Woodbridge just so Dara could attend the single-gender program here.
What were the first changes that you noticed when he started here at Woodbridge and in the all-male classes?
Just even the way that he dresses. His behavior, he just walks with a different stature. He's matured because he's around other boys.
I like the ninja.
I think that's pushing him to be the best, to be better.
Dara now gets A's and B's and dreams of becoming an Air Force pilot.
Makes me feel really good about myself and everything.
Well, there you go. This is one success story. Critics, though, were quick to point out that not all single-sex schools have had the same success that Woodbridge has in terms of the test scores. But Dr. Sachs says that the reason is the program works at Woodbridge because they've taken the time to train the teachers to really understand how to teach the genders differently, that it's a lot more than just dividing up boys and girls in classes.
I was wondering something similar to the professor in Arizona, and that is there a one-size-fits-all policy here? What about boys who learn differently than other boys and girls who learn differently than other girls?
Yeah, and he points out that based on the type of research they've done, they think there are more differences. Between the genders than there are within the genders. But it's also still a choice. Even at Woodbridge, they still continue to have the co-ed classes for students and parents who prefer that. But Dr. Sachs also says he believes that single-sex education is actually the right choice particularly for boys. He talks about this attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. These diagnoses are up in boys especially than we've seen from decades ago, and he thinks that 90% of these boys are actually misdiagnosed, and if that they understood better how to teach them, that they would see them actually be able to be off their medication.
Oh, fascinating